Story 1. I love distancing myself from people who treat me poorly. I forgive you, but from a distance. Story 2. When people insult me, I don't feel anything, and honestly, it sometimes makes me want to laugh at the sheer stupidity of some of the insults people express. Story 3. Several years ago, I decided to cut all ties with people outside my family and stop socializing at work. Since then, I have not experienced a day of drama. My blood pressure rarely rises due to stress. I ended up with my own personal space at work. I started feeling lonely for a while, so I got a dog, and that solved the problem. I have not experienced any significant negative side effects from this decision. My overall quality of life has only improved. Story 4. Having severe avoidant tendencies saves me the trouble of dealing with people who complain about those tendencies. They often struggle with setting boundaries. Story 5. Stubbornness, though often regarded as a toxic trait, is something I am accused of only when I refuse to yield to someone pressuring me into actions I do not want to take. This trait also provides me with resilience that many others seem to lack, motivating me to complete difficult tasks. I do not view either of these traits as negative. Story 6. Apathy, for the most part, invalidates gossip, drama, and bullying. However, it is a double-edged sword. Story 7. I can be the nicest person and provide all the help you need, or I can be the most vicious person you will ever meet, all in the same breath. Story 8. I am a human punching bag at work. I have angry people saying crazy things to me all the time, and I just absorb it all. I am kind of proud of it, though, because eventually people get exhausted from unloading shot after shot on me with no sign of anger from me. Story 9. I tend to jump straight to solutions when people are complaining. I have learned to let people vent without trying to fix things immediately. I am proud that I usually have multiple possibilities to troubleshoot virtually any situation. While this may be considered a toxic trait, there are advantages to it. Story 10. If you have hurt me on purpose, I will hold a grudge against you forever. I do not forget, and I do not forgive. Unless you apologize sincerely and make amends, I will continue to dislike you indefinitely. Story 11. I'm sometimes kind of obsessive. As an engineering major, I feel that being somewhat obsessive is a requirement. You need to be at least a little obsessive to sit for hours studying or solving particularly difficult problems. This is especially true if you're not exceptionally smart, as it may take longer to figure things out. Interestingly, this trait is common among some very intelligent individuals. For instance, if you examine the writings of Isaac Newton, you can find calculations that, if they weren't logical and possibly genius, would appear as if a confused individual had created them. There was an occasion when Newton was challenged by Jacob Bernoulli. Reportedly, he received the problem, reviewed it after work, and spent the entire night working on it until he solved it. That reflects obsessive behavior. As with everything else, this trait is useful in moderation. Story 12. I don't attach easily and am very emotionally independent, which can translate into emotional unavailability and apathy towards dating and romance. I'm somewhat proud of it because staying single has positively impacted my life. Story 13. I am skilled at researching clients and finding fascinating tidbits of information to share with the office. Story 14. I don't tell people about their toxic traits. When someone breaks a boundary or my trust, I disengage and remove them from my life. I don't feel the need to confront them or have the last word. Silence is my weapon. Story 15. I am not the person who always needs to be right, but I am the person who always needs to know the correct answer. If I am wrong, even if I am sure I am right. I will search for the most trivial things just to know the answer. Story 16. I'm generous to the point of destruction. I would give you my last if it means I have nothing. I would give you my last dollar if it means I have $0. I would give you the shirt off my back if it means I no longer have a shirt. I would take the fall for you even though you don't deserve the grace. I like to think that if I were in that situation, I would want someone to do that for me. But some people are just so ungrateful. Still, I keep giving. Story 17. I struggle with time management, yet I manage one of the best on-time performance operations in my state. Story 18. I have a 3.9 grade point average in college, a 3.9 in graduate school, and I currently have a 3.9 in my second master's program. You can imagine how much fun it is to live with me. Story 19. I really don't need friends. I can pick up and leave friendships over the years. I guess it helps to be a guy. This makes me very unreliable to long-term friends, though. But that's good because I don't want to be a godfather even if I can give orders. Story 20. I am very skilled at removing people from my life if I feel they are not worth my time. I can be quite distant if we encounter each other in public. Story 21. I am a self-aware narcissist. I have been working on this for so long that I can sense when it is growing out of control and stop it before it begins to affect myself and others negatively, while also benefiting from the charisma and confidence it provides. Story 22. As the world, job, and progress seem to move on, I feel my integrity and compassion are slowly becoming toxic traits. It's time to get out, I feel. Story 23. I am harmful to myself. I judge and blame myself for my bad decisions without appreciating or acknowledging the good ones. Story 24. I forget the way people have treated me after crying as soon as they start being nice again. Story 25. The intensity of my feelings is profound. The world is filled with indifferent and mundane individuals. I take pride in caring deeply about everything, even if it sometimes brings me misery. Story 26. I am skilled at being petty and take pride in my ability to outdo most people in this regard. However, I recognize that it is not a positive trait. Nowadays, I have petty thoughts but choose not to act on them. Story 27. Having a perpetually annoyed look on my face is not the same as resting face. It's more like a you better have something worthwhile to say look that keeps most of the creeps away. Story 28. I ask people about events, but by the time they want to participate, I no longer care. My lack of concern allows me to adapt well to changes, although it negatively affects my relationships with others. Story 29. Having a very low tolerance for other people's nonsense comes across as a lack of empathy to some, but I just have little patience for grown adults who refuse to improve their situation when they are able to do so. Story 30. I don't know when to quit. I love martial arts, and even though I seriously injured my shoulder and went to the emergency room, it didn't stop me. Not for long, anyway. Story 31. I can be impulsive at times, but not in the same way many others are. When I make mistakes due to my impulsiveness, it often turns out to be quite funny and difficult to explain. Story 32. I want to apologize. I'm not going to give a half-hearted apology when I don't mean it at the moment, and it feels like I'm sorry for getting in trouble rather than taking the time to understand why I am apologizing. Story 33. I process my emotions quickly. I am never upset for more than a few hours and cannot hold on to any extreme emotion. Story 34. I enjoy being petty through malicious compliance. I will make everyone dislike me for strictly following the rules. Do not upset me if I am not bothering anyone. Just let me do my thing in peace. Story 35. I'm not exactly proud of it, but I can't deny there's a part of me that is. My toxic trait is probably my ego. If I've already decided to do something on my own and someone tells me to do it, especially in a commanding tone, I'll purposely hold off. For example, if someone tells me to mow the lawn as if they're giving orders, I won't do it for a couple of days. The only exceptions are my close friends or my parents. I don't know if it's just ego or if it's being a narcissist. Story 36. I distance myself from people without any explanation. I am always prepared to leave and behave as if I have never encountered someone before. Story 37. It's a bit of a meme at this point because I make fun of it so much, but I am confident in myself. I celebrate it. Why shouldn't I? I am perfect. Story 38. If you cross my boundaries or comfort, I will walk away. I will do so without any feeling other than anger. You won't receive a warning or explanation. It's over. I understand this may seem harsh and I have lost friends because of it, but once I decide to dislike something that goes against my morals, there is no discussion worth having. Story 39. I am known to react strongly when I perceive wrongdoing against my loved ones. This is beneficial if you are the injured party, but not so much if you are on the receiving end. I have such loyalty to my family that I would fight to the death in their honor. Story 40. I am the most stubborn person I know, or maybe just delusional and obsessive compulsive. In any case, this has allowed me to focus on things in ways that most other people do not seem to be able to, but it also makes me miss out on large parts of life and alienates me from others. You asked for toxic, so there it is. Story 41. I can easily become obsessed with a subject and spend hours researching it. Then I end up spending a lot of money on it. Story 42. Hyperindependence. I need more space than most people. I often close off under stress and rely almost entirely on my self-regulation, driven by a deep desire not to impose my problems on others. This is a response to complex trauma, and it manifests in many toxic ways in my life, particularly in my relationships. However, I would not have developed this coping strategy if it had not been effective for most of my life. Story 43. I discovered I have inherited my father's ability to prioritize certain values over personal relationships. Ironically, I recognized this ability in him when he was prepared to reject me for being gay. At the time, I thought I could change, so he gave me a chance. However, this also means that if he ever begins to regress on his progress, I will be ready to cut him off like a hangnail. Story 44. I can easily cut people off in the blink of an eye. I have become accustomed to people having ulterior motives, so I expect them to leave. It's unfortunate, but it's how I have had to live. Story 45. Up until a week ago, I was aware of the trivialities that are present in almost every aspect of life. However, lately it has started to affect me negatively. Story 46. I put myself first. Growing up, I never worried about what others thought of me because I am the only one in my head. I believe I am great, so I prioritize myself. Story 47. I don't care what people think of me. In fact, I rarely think about it unless someone brings it up. I am the person who can be the worst dressed in the room and not realize it until my wife points it out. It's a double-edged sword. The positive aspect is that I don't stress about others' opinions. The downside is that I may have missed opportunities in life because I unintentionally did something that made someone think less of me. Story 48. I can remain calm when everything is chaotic. I'm not sure if that's unhealthy, but people get the impression that I am completely detached. Story 49. I am willing to be wrong and say the wrong thing without hating myself for it. Not every thought I express is a thesis I spent months on. I have plenty of silly thoughts, and I share them. Sometimes it even takes me a little while to correct myself. In spite of today's culture, where saying the wrong thing can result in being canceled and criticized online, I don't care. I am still okay with putting my foot in my mouth. I have learned and grown so much from doing it, and I will keep on doing it. Story 50. I am really skilled in my chosen career, and I base my entire identity on it. I do not care if you think I am a bad person, as long as you recognize that I am excellent at my job. Fortunately, having children helped me significantly change this mindset, but I spent my entire 20s working 60 to 70 hours a week and neglecting nearly every relationship I had. Story 51. I am really good at being alone. I can enjoy concerts, movies, and clubs all by myself and have a great time. However, it becomes difficult when I no longer want to compromise when I'm with other people. Story 52. My ability to be understanding and empathetic toward people who wrong me has been noted by others. I have been told several times that I am too nice, but honestly, everyone is burned out and just trying to get through life. Story 53. I don't let people get away with statements like, "This is my truth," or "That's just what I believe," or "We'll just have to agree to disagree," when they say something that is objectively and demonstrably wrong. I dislike the notion that everyone's opinion is valid and should be heard. Sometimes people are simply wrong, and willful ignorance should not be excused or considered a difference in opinion. Many of my learning experiences began with others telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about. It wasn't pleasant, but I did learn. Story 54. I can make myself cry on command. My friend says it's like the Hulk bite, but with tears instead of anger. Yes, I've used it to get my way, but only in situations where I feel it's necessary, and crying is the only way to get the other person to give in. I can also turn off my feelings for a short while pretty easily. I usually do this when I see someone trying to manipulate me into a fight. I just stop caring about what they say until I can process their words and intent on my own. It doesn't always work, though. I also do this unintentionally when I'm overwhelmed. I try to compartmentalize and completely detach from everything instead. It works well when I have to be functional despite wanting to collapse into an emotional puddle. However, once I no longer have to be functional, I tend to be very unfunctional for much longer than I should be. Basically, my toxic trait is not having good emotional coping skills, but I'm proud that I've learned to use this to my advantage. Story 55. I have sources when I want to bring up information in a conversation, which usually happens when someone is being factually incorrect about something I actually know. I try to be nice about it whenever possible, like saying, I found this source from a mainstream news outlet that says differently. Did anything happen to prove it wrong? Basically, I am inviting the other person to correct me if it turns out my information is incorrect. However, when someone is blatantly wrong about something in ways that are easily debunked if you just think for a moment, such as the claim about 5G towers activating vaccines to make people sick from a call center employee who works with phone lines, and they actively speak over others to insist they are right and everyone else is wrong, all bets are off. You will receive a text in the group chat we are in together with nothing but a link to a reputable news article about the subject in question, and I will not apologize for hurting your feelings or not being the bigger person. Funnily enough, while I haven't heard any 5G conspiracy theories from the parents who taught me to think critically and check my sources, I have heard plenty of other conspiracies from them that could have been avoided if they had just thought critically and checked their sources. To summarize, my point is that I tend to be the actually person in the room, and while I do try to soften the blow whenever I cannot let factual inaccuracies slide. Story 56. I can function incredibly well while hungover because I grew up in a culture of dealing with it and heavy drinking. The only reason I am slightly proud of this is that if I can excel in such conditions, it means I can perform with ease under normal circumstances. Story 57. I struggle to maintain friendships, but if I need to end a relationship with someone toxic, I find it easy to do so. Story 58. People pleaser. It's not that I will be selfless, but being a people pleaser without the craving for validation is so warm on the inside. Story 59. I am competitive, although I pretend that I am not. I never belittle others or deceive them into failing, but when I see someone excelling, I am immediately drawn to them. I aspire to reach their level and elevate my performance even further. Story 60. I say what is going to happen and then tell everyone I told you. I am not right all the time, but it is not hard to recognize patterns or dominoes falling. Story 61. My brutal honesty is just my opinion. There's always a flip side. I call it how I see it, and many people do not appreciate the bluntness. If you want something sugar-coated, it is probably best not to ask me. Story 62. Cutting people off is something I do with ease. I have severed ties with a few toxic individuals in my life and rarely think about them after. I appreciate that I do not go back to those who have hurt me, unlike others who repeatedly allow the same individuals to mistreat them. However, I find it somewhat concerning that I can disconnect so easily. I can know someone for over 10 years, and the moment they do something unforgivable, I can completely end all contact and move on within 2 days. Story 63. Being relentlessly cynical keeps me out of trouble, like having the personality of a cactus to drive people away from bothering me. Story 64. Eavesdropping allows me to listen to people's conversations and gather information about them, whether they like it or not. Story 65. Disliking someone and being unkind to them can reveal their true nature. Eventually, they show their true colors, and I will say, I knew there was something about them I didn't like. Story 66. I can tell when a couple is about to break up, well before the obvious signs. People think I am being negative, but I am usually correct. I never say anything to the couple, of course. Story 67. I notice tiny details about everything. It is both a blessing and a curse. I can certainly tell when you are not being truthful with me. Story 68. My mom and sister always viewed my refusal to tolerate people's nonsense as being cold and mean. I am straightforward, and it has helped me keep toxic people at a distance. Another supposed toxic trait I have is being too unhinged for polite society. My aunt, uncle, and cousins think I am trashy for swearing. If they are boring, then I embrace being the opposite. Story 69. I will argue with someone even when I know I am wrong, just to see if they can actually prove it. It is not about being right. It is about the drama. Story 70. I have a zero-tolerance approach towards individuals who harm others, particularly criminals who prey on innocent people. Once, I encountered a criminal I had previously dealt with, someone I had to intervene with to prevent him from assaulting his own mother a week earlier. He was waiting alone at a bus stop in the countryside. I turned my car around and waited at the previous stop. I informed the bus driver that the man waiting at the next stop had a history of violent behavior and harassing people in public, and I suggested that he skip that stop if no one needed to disembark. I then ran to my car and followed the bus. I saw it drive past him while he jumped up and down in pure rage. Story 71. I love being the black sheep of my family to the point where I have caught myself getting mad at those who try to be like me. Story 72. I'm not afraid to express my thoughts, but some people say I create too much drama, while others have mentioned they appreciate that I speak up because it is rare. Story 73. I refer to my abilities as a siren. I find that men are often easy to influence. However, I enjoy playing with their emotions, to be honest. Story 74. I don't care who it is. If their plan is bad, I'll tell them it's bad and then explain why. I don't take credit for it, though. I work for the military, and most of them surprisingly appreciate it. It gets things done faster and makes them look better to their superiors. Story 75. Lacking empathy as in clinical terms. With that said, I still believe it's important to behave in empathetic ways, and I make an effort to do so. However, not being burdened by the feeling of empathy and compassion allows me to be pragmatic and simplifies my life significantly. Story 76. I don't know if that's toxic, but it certainly causes me to feel stuck in some ways, such as taking words seriously at all times. I listen to what people say and take it to heart, plus I hold people to very high standards. I think I do the same for myself, if not worse. Story 77. I can cut people out of my life without feeling anything. My doctor explained that it is a mix of my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and a trauma response. However, I find that I don't actually miss people. Therefore, removing individuals from my life, including best friends I've had for over 10 years and even family, requires no effort, and I feel nothing at all about it. I know it may be a negative trait, but it has also helped me let go of toxic individuals. Story 78. Incapable of being content unless I provide maximum utility to everyone around me at all times, I will actively push away people who enjoy my company unless I am capable of being perfect. Anything less than that triggers alarms in my head that I am hurting them with my imperfect presence, which actually hurts their feelings because I am rarely up for that. My ideal life path is to make a contribution to the world that improves the quality of life for everyone, and then immediately die so I don't do anything to screw it up. Proud might not be the right word. It has ruined a significant portion of my life and makes me borderline torturous to know. However, it does feel somewhat nice to acknowledge that one of my biggest flaws is finding it nearly impossible to be selfish on purpose. I make mistakes and hurt the people I care about regularly because it is essentially being selfish by accident, but at least I never want to hurt anyone. Story 79. Do not shame or make fun of people for things beyond their control, such as gender identity, race, or orientation. However, I believe it is acceptable to address negative behavior associated with poor decision-making. Story 80. Being a disrespectful person who openly criticizes those who believe they can speak about me in secret. Story 81. I can't accept no as an answer. Don't get me wrong. I respect it, but when it comes to limiting me, I find a way to grow and get it done. Story 82. My toxic trait is being a perfectionist, and I'm proud of it. Pushes me to always give my best, even if it means reviewing something multiple times. It can be overwhelming for others at times, but it delivers results. Story 83. I know someone has mentioned this, but it is easy to detach from people. I would categorize it as a trauma response, and I believe it applies in this situation. Story 84. I can be blunt at times because of my autism. Occasionally, this is pleasant because when I express something genuinely, people start laughing. Story 85. The moment I realize I am falling or caring for a person more than I should, I start to distance myself so I can keep my mind ahead of my heart. Story 86. I often make poor first impressions socially, which helps keep casual acquaintances and small talkers away from me. Story 87. My negative and degrading self-talk keeps me grounded in reality. I believe I deserve it. Story 88. I can be fairly aggressive, not just at work, but I get things done. It is not unfair to push for certain things, but the method I use can be aggressive. I could use softer approaches, but I have learned from experience that they do not work with certain types of people. I note that I shouldn't act this way outside of work. Sometimes it is just a habit. Story 89. Hyper-independence. I am nearly incapable of asking for help or even realizing that I need assistance. However, on the flip side, I can teach myself to do almost anything and perform reasonably well at it. Story 90. Whenever I see someone, it plays back in my mind, and I turn into a comedian, making a joke out of it, but I never share it out loud. Story 91. I am quite stubborn, especially if someone tries to push me to do something. I take pride in this because it makes me harder to manipulate. However, if you tell me I cannot do something, I will strive to prove you wrong. Story 92. I take advice very well. I smile, nod, and agree. Then I go do whatever I want. Lest anyone think I am bragging, it really is toxic. It has affected me more times than I can count, and I wish it was easier to control. But somehow I am still somewhat proud of it. Story 93. I am silent when I am angry. Some adults need to figure out their behavior. I cannot keep telling them every time they do something wrong. Story 94. I know clearly what I like and what I don't like. I can announce it and set boundaries. I feel I establish boundaries every day. Story 95. Being a little bit more judgmental than I should be, I ended up being right many times, and I'm glad I was. Story 96. My coping mechanism is being silent and dealing with my feelings by myself. I'm extremely proud of this because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that being vulnerable to others during difficult times can lead to negative consequences, as people may use that vulnerability against you eventually. I'm aware that this approach may backfire one day, but for now, I continue to handle things on my own. Story 97. I used to be a chronic people pleaser, but now I am considered mean. I live by the fact that I am kind, not nice. Story 98. I am selective about the people I keep in my circle, and often I discover years later that my judgments were accurate. I am kind to others, but I hold some strong opinions that have served me well and helped me maintain my morals. Story 99. Extremely judgmental with a 99% accuracy rate. I must accept that not every person I encounter is an entirely open book at all times. Story 100. Being bitter. I could offer my forgiveness depending on the situation if you played with me, but I will never forget that I was betrayed. I certainly did not view that as a mistake. Story 101. I am persistent to a fault. If I decide I want to do something, I am going to do it at any cost. Nobody can tell me no, and I am willing to push myself if that is what it takes. Being told you cannot do that actively makes me want to do it more. Story 102. I can forget that people exist, literally. The moment someone leaves my sight, they are dead to me, as if I never knew them. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is interesting sometimes. Story 103. I tend to be judgmental about people I meet. It's not that I express my feelings directly when we first meet, but I often find that my instincts about them are accurate. Time reveals the truth, but how is it that I can perceive it before then? Story 104. I cannot develop romantic feelings for someone who does not express them for me. I find people attractive and can have sexual or flirtatious feelings for them, but an actual crush can only happen if they feel that way about me. If I find someone attractive and have those feelings, but then discover they are in a relationship or not interested, those thoughts and feelings disappear instantly. I believe this has saved me a lot of heartache in my life, While it feels strange to write this, I am somewhat happy to be the way I am. Story 105. I am a movie enthusiast. Many trust my recommendations because they are aware of this. However, many also disregard my opinion if I say a film is not worth watching. Story 106. Self-esteem issues. I have to admit that when I make statements that tread the line between self-deprecation and self-loathing, I enjoy the discomfort and awkwardness it causes in people. Story 107. I excel at gaslighting, but in a polite manner. Deep down, you will sense that you are wrong and owe me for your actions. Story 108. I am skilled at influencing others. This ability likely stems from growing up with emotionally immature parents and various career choices where it has proven useful. However, it has made me feel uncomfortable at times. Nonetheless, I excel at motivating people to achieve specific outcomes. Story 109. I wonder how I can tune out of certain topics when I don't feel good about the comments being made. Story 110. I am not very forgiving. At one point, it was somewhat of a meme, but I believe it has served me well and allowed me to curate my life. I have learned to be more relaxed about the people who truly matter to me. Story 111. I have already selected my friends who have become like family, so anyone outside of that circle is easily cut off and mainly there to fill my time. Story 112. I have this uncanny ability to completely erase people from my memory. If I give you chance after chance to not hurt me, then when that last chance comes, it's like I hit delete on you completely. I can encounter people after that and they'll try to speak to me, but I'm really searching my brain to figure out who I'm talking to and how they know me. I literally just stand there staring at them like a deer in headlights because I have no clue who they are. This is not a healthy trait for sure, but it has helped with all the trauma I've experienced in my life. Story 113. If someone has wronged me in a significant way, I will never give them the satisfaction of forgiving them, no matter how many times they ask. I also do not feel the weight I am expected to feel by not letting go of the hate or whatever. Story 114. I'm not proud of this, but when someone threatens to kill me, my mindset is, not if I kill you first. That's how it is with my cousin's neighbor. The first time I met him, he threatened to shoot me with his shotgun. That's why I made a pact with myself to never own a working firearm, despite my interest in them. Story 115. I promise myself not to step out of the house and go out without returning for days. Once I have stepped out, I feel like I am flying until my energy runs out. Story 116. I am knowledgeable in various subjects. I have degrees in both science and fine arts. I am skilled in home, garage, and garden tasks, and I am an avid reader. Story 117. I don't often feel anything when I'm insulted. I have said much worse to myself over the years. Why would calling me a loser affect me at all? Story 118. I can be harsh with my words when pushed too far. However, I express what needs to be said. There's no point in pretending everything is okay and that humanity is perfect. If they are not, then it is not. Story 119. It's taken me many years. Many people have taken advantage of me and used me as a doormat. No longer. I have no care left to give. I am prioritizing myself first and foremost. No more pleasing others. Story 120. I am too stubborn to listen to anyone, and because of that, I am building a life that is completely different from what my family, teachers, or ex-partners imagined for me. It scares me to think about the life others wanted for me and how unhappy I would be if I had listened to people who do not truly care to get to know me. Story 121. I'm not angry for long. It takes me about 5 minutes to realize how unnecessary a confrontation was in the context of life on Earth. Story 122. In my last 2 years of high school, I was rarely present, but I never missed anything important. I maintained excellent grades by being strategic with my absences. I received projects and homework one day, then had the next 2 to 3 class periods to work on them. I would attend the class where the assignment was explained and then complete the work at home. Our class periods lasted an hour and a half, with 4 periods in a day. One of the classes where I would do this was my first class of the day, and in my second class I served as a library aide. We seldom had actual tasks to perform as library aides, other than checking out books for other students. There were several library aides each period, and most students did not use the library anyway. This allowed me to stay home for half of my day without falling behind in school. It was a great situation. I suspect one of my teachers figured this out and was upset. She informed me that if it were her decision, she would take me to court. She was the same teacher who gave us 3 class periods to finish a project that could be completed in one. It also helped that our attendance officer was a close friend of my mother. Story 123. Detach from people, and I will think of you every day of my life. I will never allow myself to show it. Story 124. I have a sharp tongue because I can tease and roast people. It hurts, but maybe in a healing way. I push people's buttons just enough for them to take action, whether it's messaging their ex or making life decisions. I'm like a chaotic life coach in disguise. Story 125. I do not allow anyone to disrespect or take advantage of me. If you are problematic, I will ensure you are removed from my life. Story 126. I would say my biggest strength is being stubborn. I can be incredibly determined once I have made up my mind about something. While this trait can be annoying at times, it also helps me push through tough situations. Story 127. I don't have much empathy. I don't go out of my way to be unkind, though. I just don't contribute to making people feel better, I suppose. Story 128. Giving the silent treatment, not explaining why I'm upset. I'd rather make someone else cry and not care about it. It always helps. I want my peace when I go to bed, so letting go of people is something I'm used to. I don't see any sense in putting in effort only to lose my peace of mind for nothing. Story 129. As a man, I do not open up to women other than my wife, and I have found that I am not blamed for my problems or had them brushed aside. Story 130. I never compromise on my sense of right and wrong. I don't care if Tim from high school is a vicar now with a beautiful wife and 5 kids, and if he is rescuing puppies in his spare time and has turned his life around. He still hasn't apologized to me for his past behavior. Because of that, everything he has done is still tainted. Story 131. I have a very long fuse, but a horrible temper. Anyone who knows me can attest that if I actually lose my temper, it is completely justified. Think of the Hulk, but I'm rarely angry. Then, once every decade or so, someone just has to push my buttons, and my friends talk about the incident for years afterward. It's full scale. I feel like I'm going to ruin your life until I feel whole or achieve justice. The last time, I punched an aggressive colleague and faced no repercussions because nobody saw a thing. Story 132. I have no feeling of addiction, so I do not pick up other people's addictions, such as those of my friends or partner. I dated my ex for 7 months. She smoked every day, and during that time, I started doing the same. When we broke up, I immediately stopped without any withdrawal or desire to go back. So far, it has worked with coffee, soda, alcohol, cigarettes, and gaming. Although it was to prove I could completely stop, I just got a new gaming console last week, and I'm using it fully. Story 133. I enjoy arguing online, and I'm pretty good at it. I visit comment sections where I know I will be outnumbered and look for points I can refute. Story 134. I am not really proud of this, but I know I exhibit toxic positivity. It works for me because I have a tenacity to pursue big goals. However, I can see how it does not work for others. I have to dial it back when interacting with them. Story 135. There is no toxic trait that I am proud of. It is strange to me how many people have quickly commented on theirs here. Being toxic is nothing to take pride in. Story 136. When you have to tell the truth, just do it. I often faced criticism for being straightforward and honest with someone. Sometimes you have to do it if you need to accomplish tasks. Recently, there has been a rise in violence against intellectuals. Story 137. I am very skilled at lying without showing any emotions. Growing up with controlling parents taught me how to lie without getting caught, as if it were second nature. As an adult, I strive to be as honest as possible, but I feel a sense of comfort knowing that I could successfully deceive someone if necessary. Story 138. I am bipolar. Type I. I have stopped being passive and now I speak up when people are mistreated. I was known for this at my previous job and am recognized for it at my current job. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.